some people know or think they will not be backed by their community, and therefore it's safer for them to keep quiet. I don't really like this whole like persona and this idea that like these men who are horrible to gay people are DL. Sometimes guys are actually just really horrible. Being with DL men, realistically, you don't rate yourself. You know, you don't rate yourself, because if you rated yourself, you'd go find a queer in Pussy Palace. Hello everyone, how are we? Hope you're well, safe, hydrated, well rested, and everything in between. Oh my god, it's such a beautiful day. The receptionist at the studio said, "Oh, what a day to be doing a podcast." I was like, yeah, to be fair. That's how dedicated I am to the cause, guys. Just remember this: like, share, comment, and subscribe. That is how dedicated I am to the cause. For those of you who may not be familiar with me, my name is Jord. It's really nice to meet you on this lovely Tuesday, coming from a Saturday recording in northwest London. And for those of you who do know me, what are you saying? How are you? Love you down. So, today on the Winning Side podcast, I really wanted to have a conversation about DL culture. Obviously, this is, primarily, this is an LGBTQ plus podcast. We talk about all sorts of issues, DL culture being quite a prominent conversation which comes up. But I've never really given it the... I was going to say like the credit it deserves. I've never given it like the full length of what I've wanted to, I think DL culture, unfortunately, is something which is quite popular, quite prominent, and affects so many people, whether you are DL or aren't, for multiple reasons, which I'll go into. But yeah, I've seen like so many takes from different perspectives, and obviously context. I'm British, English, London. Well, I say London based, not really. I film in London. I'm from Southwest England, okay? And then like where I see like American creators and Canadian creators and British creators, there's a lot of different experiences and perspectives, The way I talk about it isn't necessarily applicable to every single queer person from the Southwest, not applicable for every person in London, not applicable for every person in the UK. But I don't know, I just really want to have a conversation about it. So let's go. Okay, so DL is known as down low, discreet, closeted. This idea of how it seems to be more popular and commonly used for men, who have a certain persona where they come across heterosexual or perform as a heterosexual person externally outside, but secretly they are having relationships, intimacy, and sexual encounters with men, trans women, and people who do not identify or who are not cis women. That's like the general gist, right? So the term is actually originated from African American terminology. Black Americans were the ones who coined this term in the 1900s, but this became more prominent and more thoroughly used throughout pop culture due to the usage of DL being used within hip hop. But obviously, like if we make the distinction, when these rappers, that being like R. Kelly, TLC, are using the term DL, it's not necessarily the same phrase how we've seen it. They see DL as like misbehaving, a bit promiscuous, like going against what is deemed and suited, or going against what is deemed or seen as appropriate. So it's kind of like, but you can kind of argue they are the same thing somewhat, but like it was a different take, and I think obviously because rap culture was on the rise, especially in America in the 1990s, that just like across the globe just became like, unmissable, if you will. There's different ways of viewing it. It can be seen as secretive behavior. The commonly used term that we use as queer people, usually the sexual slang, the idea that heterosexual men who claim to be straight secretly have relationships with men or intimacy or sexual encounters. And then we have this idea of this like modern evolution, how like like the idea of being DL or speaking to someone who is DL is commonly used on things such as dating apps and social media, you know, by people who indicate what they're into, but also have that preference to be quiet. And I guess, and like, guys, let's interact. Talk to me in the comments. Do you guys think there is a difference between being DL and discreet? I do, but like, obviously, like, these aren't facts. These aren't scientifically proven. It's just like an observation that I've collected as someone who has like dabbled with DL men. Do you know what? Not that I praise DL men, but I'm so intrigued by it. I'm 27 years old, been out since I was 18, was never DL because I just wouldn't have got away with it. I'm not a sly person, apart from like my friend that I gave slops to when I was 17. Gagged. Hope he's well. I remember obviously like when I was like messing with guys when I was like 18, 19, right? And a lot of the guys were like older. They were like in their late 20s or they were like in their 30s, you know, they were concerningly older, and these men still weren't out, you know. I'm 27 years old and I feel like I'm making up for lost time for only being out for 9 years in August. So I can't even imagine having like another 5, another 10. Like, it would drive me mad. But I guess at the same time, people have different priorities, you know. I like to think and see myself as like someone who is unapologetically queer presenting. I love talking about being queer. I love being queer, you know. It's taken a long time to get there. But like, even still, like, I'm 27, do you know what I mean? So it's just like an interesting approach, if you will. But yeah. Do we think there's a difference between being DL and discreet? I personally do. I perceive being DL as full speed ahead. When I think of DL, I think of no relationship created, no interest apart from hitting it. It's all very minimal. When I think of DL, I think of literally like hit it and bounce. I think of like no lips in, literally stick in and jump. Like I think it's really rare to be classed or seen as DL and actually be able to create a real intimate relationship, you know. Whereas with discreet, I see discreet as you being out or you being out to some, but like you're not exposing it. You're not like shouting it from the rooftops. You're not actively telling people you're queer. I think it's just more like a low-key vibe. Or also maybe like you're selectively out to people. I'm finding that very common like now. I've met a lot of people that like are out to their friends, very queer and very gay with their friends, but that kind of doesn't land when it comes to family. And that can be for so many reasons, such as culture, religion, you know. It makes sense, but I think at what point do we just stop using it as a justification and just live our truth? But obviously, as someone who's privileged, I guess that's really like easier to say than done. But yeah, I would say that DL is a lack of emotional intimacy. DL is very much like get it and leave, you know, hit it and jump. Whereas discreet, I think you're still able to establish some kind of intimacy or an emotional connection. However, it's low key, you know, it's not showcased and it's not necessarily something that you're going to be on about. That's how I see the difference between being DL and being discreet. I am trying to have like a wider take and a wider perspective on the DL culture, because obviously like I'm not DL. I've never been DL. Yes, I've dabbled with my fair few DL men and like I am someone who seems to attract them. But like, I feel like there's so much noise and so much volume online on social media about how like, oh, you shouldn't do this as a DL man. You shouldn't be with a DL man. I'm like, guys, it's actually easier said than done. You know, there's so many circumstances. And a lot of the time, falling for these guys or getting with these guys or meeting these guys isn't intentional. Sometimes it is literally, okay, fair enough. If you're actively on the apps trying to like hook up with them, like do what you want to do. And I feel like there's a lot of judgment. But I think you need to be realistic with what's going to happen or what you expect to happen at least. I wanted to create a different perspective and a reasoning as to why people may be DL. So context, I'm Jamaican. Okay, I'm half Jamaican. My mum's, obviously I'm mixed race in it, but like my mum's Jamaican. I'm half Jamaican. Yeah, I feel like with cases like mine, it can sometimes being DL or being discreet can make a lot of sense because of culture. Culture and religion and faith can have really strong implications and consequences. Some people aren't willing to, because some people aren't willing to risk it all in order to be out. Some people know or think they will not be backed by their community, and therefore it's safer for them to keep quiet, which is obviously really heartbreaking. I do feel like, in a way, and maybe I see this differently as a queer person, I do feel like, in a way, if you're someone who's going to have a family or have kids, if you're not going to accept them and love them for everything about them, I feel like you just shouldn't be having kids. I feel like, as someone who wants to have a family, if you're not willing to accept that they could like anyone, be anyone, or be different to what you expected, you actually don't need to be a parent. You do not need to be a parent. If there's a certain characteristic or certain sexuality which you feel uncomfortable with your child having, you don't need to be a parent. Honestly, you genuinely don't. Like, it's actually okay. Like, not everyone needs to have kids, It's all right. And I think growing up, being Jamaican, being surrounded primarily by Jamaican family members was prominent, and obviously, like, to be honest, like, vast majority of close family members were great. So I wouldn't say the ones who weren't great weren't bad, but they made it very clear that they weren't pro queerness, they weren't pro gay. I can remember once watching, I feel like I can't think of what the film was. Maybe Danish Girl? I want to say, I actually can't remember. I want to say Danish Girl, but I could be wrong. I remember there being a conversation between me, a family member, and a family friend about, it wasn't about a gay person. It was about a trans person. And this Jamaican person in my family was very much like, basically just said it's black and white. Is pretty much what they were saying, and like, that was, I was young, I was a teenager, and I remember thinking to myself, yikes, okay, if that's how you feel, you've made it clear. And then several other comments were made whilst watching the news, etc., with visible queer people, and like remarks being made. I have like the best mum, and the best dad, so like coming out was easier than it could have been, should have been, or would have been for maybe the average Jamaican person. But I don't want to generalize all Jamaicans and make it out like that's the case for everyone, because it really isn't. I'm just basing it off what I know, what my friends know, and like, what people who I follow know. It can be really difficult being a queer Jamaican person, because it almost feels like homophobia is so heavily embedded within Jamaican culture. I love being Jamaican, I love Jamaican culture, I love the loyalty, I love the unit, but like, obviously, like, when it comes to my queerness, I feel like I have to like tone it down a bit, I feel like I find it quite comical, because like older Jamaicans or like uncles will make the most noise and the most volume about how your queerness isn't right, how God wouldn't rate that and all of that. And I'm thinking, okay, but what about all the baby mamas you've got? What about all the children you made out of marriage? What about you, man, getting mashed up on a Saturday so you can't go to church on Sunday? Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of double standards in Jamaican culture. Growing up, I kind of told myself that like I can't have both. I can't be Jamaican and be queer. It's not okay. And like, it's only been in the last few years where I think, well, no, like, I'm very queer and I'm here, right? I am a Jamaican person. Okay, yeah, I am like, obviously mixed race, but if you like track my DNA, if you look at my biology, I'm more Jamaican than anything else, Like, my roots are in St. Catherine's, my roots are in Mandeville. Whether you want to accept my queerness or not, you can't diminish my Jamaicanness. So, yeah. Let it go, uncles. Let it go. But like, even still to this very day, like, being queer is illegal in 65 countries. That's crazy. Jamaica was actually labelled as the most homophobic place on earth 20 years ago. That's crazy. Okay, and like, even still, like that homophobia is still embedded. I think it is illegal to be gay in Jamaica, but like I think it's one of those ones where like it's not heavily enforced as much as it was. Well, it was under the British colonial era against the Act of 1864. Like sex between men are illegal. I don't think it's the case for women though, and obviously like there is a lot of homophobia for queer Jamaican women as well. That's like, I'm not diminishing that, but I think it doesn't really seem to get as highlighted as it does compared to men. But I believe that like the rules and the laws are there, but they're not that heavily enforced. You know, I would love to do a trip to Jamaica and talk to some queer people and do some content. That's something I really want to do before I'm 30. Like really, really badly. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, homosexuality is still illegal in 65 countries. That's crazy. Even like multiple countries still have death penalty. You know, countries like Sudan, Iran, Saudi Arabia. I think Nigeria is, depending on states, but I don't think it's the whole of it. You know, but even like double digits in 2026 to still be illegal is crazy. And yeah, and these countries are primarily in Africa, Asia and Middle Eastern and the Caribbean. You know, the countries which primarily are dominated by black and brown people, and it kind of again communicates this idea of how you can kind of see somehow, some way that this DL culture tends to be more popular within people of colour. Because obviously, like, I'm from Gloucestershire, right, which is quite white, so I didn't really have much to go on. But obviously working in London, being in London, living in Oxford as well, meeting multicultural friends, POC queer people, and then being genuinely like stunned by how many DL people there were, you know? But I don't want to like obviously like approve it, but I do get it. Like it makes sense why this is the case. Like I understand it. I'm not a dummy. I want to talk about like my own experiences with DL men because I think it adds a bit of context. Like I said, I've never been DL. Like it just... Do you know what? It's so interesting because obviously maybe that just says more about my mum and dad making life more comfortable for me. Because like for me, this may be coming from like a place of luxury and privilege. I never even considered being DL as a possibility. Let's roll it back. I remember when I was 18, right? And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going crazy. I'm going mad. I really wanted to date guys. And I remember thinking like, this isn't going to happen if you're not out, you know. And when you live somewhere so small as well, it makes it even more difficult. But I really remember thinking, I came out in August 2017, yeah. And I remember probably from about May or June, I was like, okay, this needs to happen soon. But I remember those few months, I felt like I was going crazy. I genuinely felt like I was losing my mind. And I think I may have came out to my friends probably a few weeks before because thankfully, if I actually shout out to my friend actually came out like probably about 5 minutes before I did, right? And I thought, you know what, this makes it a lot easier, a lot more peaceful, a lot more smoother to navigate. And I do always think to myself, if my friend hadn't have come out then, when would I have? Would I have like moved a bit mad for a few years? Like, what would I have done? And that's why I'm so like sad by how common it is to be DL. You know, like the way that my life is now is something I would have never imagined as a teenager, you know, having these like seeing these guys that I fancied and wanting to kiss them and do God knows what. I never thought that would be, I mean, I am very single. I am very single. I never thought that would be a possibility when I was a teenager. You know, I didn't really expect to be alive. Like, I didn't really expect to be alive, to be honest, because I just thought I can't live like this. And I remember from that duration from about April, May time to about August, I was going absolutely insane. And then the reaction was just great. Better than it could have ever been. And I thought, you know what, that's really lucky. But like, I do know that isn't the case for a lot of people, you know. And I think it is really important to recognize that like coming out isn't a possibility for everyone. Not everyone has the luxury. Sometimes I take it for granted how lucky I am, to have parents that like love the queers, to have friends that are queer, and to have other friends who are the biggest allies ever. Not everyone has that luxury. And I feel like there's so much slander. There's so much slander and so much backlash and so much commentary on DL men. And obviously it's not an ideal situation. Like, nobody wants to be DL, really, surely. Or nobody wants to be with a DL, surely. Like, sometimes it just happens, But like, when you risk losing your community, your family, your friends, your environment, sometimes you have to weigh out the options, and people just don't see it as a risk worth taking. Which obviously, like, it's really even, to be honest, it's even hard to say, would I be the same? Would I feel that way? Would I act that way? Because I don't know, because I don't have that issue, Like, yeah, a couple of people in my circle were a bit funny, but nothing severe, I have a podcast on queerness. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have started laughing, Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful. And I'm aware, and I acknowledge. Okay, so I want to talk about my own experiences with DL men. Do you know what? There's been so many. I'll be honest, right? I actually think when I was younger, the reason why, when I was young, the reason why I gravitated towards DL men so much when I was younger is because I didn't like myself. I thought DL men, in a way, were a reflection of me, insecure, unsure, and also like not really expecting anything long-term or love, I think like when you're so insecure, especially like as a queer person, you can't always vision yourself being loved. You can't like picture yourself being adored, and I think this gravitation towards DL men was an example of that. I really didn't rate myself, and I just kind of thought, well, those DL men, they don't rate themselves either, so let me just like see what they're saying. That was very much it. And it's so funny because like they would approach me. Like, I remember the first guy I really, really liked. Oh God, I liked him so much. Do you know what? Yeah. So this is a bit crazy, but like I really wanted to know how he was doing. So every couple of years, because I'm blocked, every couple of years I check his LinkedIn to see how he is. So like, yeah, there was this guy the first guy I ever really liked. Yeah. I'm blocked. Like, my man hates me. However, I like to check in and see that he's doing okay. So every like 1 to 2 years, I'll like check his LinkedIn and see what he's saying. But like, I am blocked. Like, I am blocked on everything, and then I have to like block it afterwards, so he doesn't know that I have seen his profile. But I believe he is currently having fun in Australia. So big up him. Yeah, sometimes you need to let go. But no, yeah. So he was the first person I really liked. I was genuinely like infatuated by him. I don't think I've ever felt that way about anyone since. I don't know if it's because it was the first time I met someone and it felt like it was actually real. I don't know if it was because it was the first time I met someone and I thought, oh my God, this is more than a hit. This is more than a shake it and bounce, And I think that can be the worst type. The type with the DLs where like they actually do feel something for you. He had like, obviously like he told me, I mean, I don't think he would have liked, I really, really liked him and he really, really liked me. He wasn't out to anyone, no friends or family, but it was interesting because he was really happy to meet my friends. I was obsessed with him. I was absolutely obsessed. But then like certain things became really clear how this was never going to work. I remember going on a date with him once and I said to him, I was like, oh, don't we look cute or something like that? To which he responded like erratically, oh my God, do you think we look like a couple? I thought, bro, we just look like two friends. Calm down. But the thing is that, do you know what it is? Because I'm so comfortable in my sexuality and so are my straight friends, I flirt with like all of my straight friends, right? Like, and it's obviously like with consent, but like, I'm like very flirtatious with my straight male friends, right? And like, because they're so comfortable in their sexuality, they bounce it back. I genuinely feel like the guys, the ones who are a bit like shaken by queer people being friendly or flirting are a bit sus. I actually think they're the ones you need to watch out for, to be honest. You heard it here first. Give me your report and let me know what happened. But there was that. And then I remember going to pay for parking and he panicked because someone he knew was in the queue. And I remember saying to him, I was like, we do not look like a couple. Chill. Like, we look like two friends, and it's just exhausting. And I just thought this just isn't going to work. But naturally, I really liked him. So it went on and it went on. And then obviously it went south and now I'm blocked. But he's actually out living his best life, which I always really wanted for him. So yeah, big up him. But yeah, so there was that experience, which was difficult. And then I think, because I did dabble quite a bit in uni and a bit in my early 20s. And I'm getting a lot of blasts from the past. That's the thing that seems to be happening. But I'm just do you know what? If I was in my early 20s, things would be very different. But I want to say I'm grown, but I'm not grown. I'm just 27. Being with DL men is self-destruction. Being with DL men, realistically, you don't rate yourself. You don't rate yourself, because if you rated yourself, you'd go find a queer in Pussy Palace. If you rated yourself, you'd go find a queer at the cookout. Do you know what I mean? It's not every day. It's not every day. And it gets to a point where I think to myself, I'm and as someone now who's done it, got the receipts, I'm thinking, how do you think this is going to end? How do you think this is going to end? Because it's not going to end up with you together, It's not going to end up with you together. It's not going to end up with you being someone they meet in daytime, in daylight, in public, my sympathy can only stretch so far. And you know what? To be honest, I can appreciate someone who can detach and just wants to have a bit of fun. I'm you know what? Fair enough. If there's no harm, no game. But it's when they expect the most. It's when these poor queer people, these naive queer people expect the most, and they think there's going to be something substantial which leads to a relationship. Baby boy, get to the club. Get to the club, It's a fantasy, it's outdated, and it's just not cute, When you're young and you're fine, why are you wasting your time? I get so upset and so stressed thinking about how much time I wasted on DL boys when I was younger. What for? It's good content now, but still. There's probably been 2 DL guys I really liked. So the one guy, and there was another guy who's more recent, but not that recent, probably 4 years ago, right? A man of colour. I don't think he'll watch this, but I want to be careful. A man of colour, and very much roadman vibe, very much from the ends, from the gully. And again, he told me that he had feelings for me, but his thing was always very much my boys won't rep me the same, my boys won't F with me the same. Guys, if your boys aren't rolling with you because you're gay, they weren't your friends in the first place. Do you get it? As a queer person, if you can't have straight friends that don't embrace your queerness and queer culture, what kind of friends are that? And how are they friends that you want to lose? Baby boy, it's 2026. It's I have a straight friend, right, who's in a friendship group of 20 guys. And I said to him once, I was oh, so how many of them are queer? He was oh, none of them still. I was bro, there's 20 of you. 20. I guarantee, quite clearly they don't want to admit it, but I guarantee that at least 3 or 4 have had slops from a bloke. And that's okay. It's Pride Month, that's okay. But I don't know why this idea of being queer or being gay is so frowned upon and so crazy. There's a friendship group of 20 people and you're telling me that at least 2 of them haven't had a little I don't believe it. With my experiences with DL men, I kept going back to it because I was just insecure. And to be fair, I am still insecure. But I have respect for myself. Do you know what I mean? I feel sometimes people pretend to be DL because it seems more masculine. It's I was talking to someone, right, and he was saying that he was DL. I must have been in my early 20s. And I just thought, okay, whatever. And then like my friends were telling me about him, and I thought, well, you can't be that DL then. The actual DLs that I remember, yeah, they're the ones that like don't want to chit chat. They only want to meet in car parks. They don't even give you their real name. I remember this one time, oh my God, I remember this one guy, yeah. This one guy gave me, I remember this time, this DL guy gave me a fake name, yeah? Gave me a fake name, but I had his Snapchat and I was talking to a friend about it, and my friend was like, oh, I know him. That's not his name. His name's so-and-so. And I called him out on it, and he was, oh, this is why I don't tell you my business, because you're crazy. I was like, bro, you've literally lied about your age and your name. What do you mean? The thing is, yeah, when they get caught, they make it out that like they're the victim. But then to be fair, I am self-destructive. But like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean, big man? I quickly want to talk about DL culture in media and pop. I actually think that DL culture, or discreet queer relationships in media, is glamorized. I think it's also made to be more optimistic than it is. There's a lot of cases within DL culture in media and film and TV where this guy will initially be DL, he'll get with a queer person, and by the time that the show or the film ends, they're happily together. That really isn't the case for a lot of people. When I think of examples, I think of Heartstopper. I don't know whether we can count Nick Nelson as DL, but like it's still discreet behavior, right? For a minute, let's put that in the back. But Adam from Sex Education, that's a really good example. You know, okay, him and Eric didn't end up together, but like they were together for a minute, you know? Glee, oh my God, Glee was the worst. What was that guy called that bullied Kurt? Dave, oh my God. Do you guys remember Dave in Glee? The one that was just so horrible to Kurt. So horrible. And I just thought, what? That was honestly, like, I don't really like this whole like persona and this idea that like these men who are horrible to gay people are DL. Sometimes guys are actually just really horrible. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes guys are actually just like really nasty. Like I see it a lot. It's like, oh, your man must be DL. I'm like, bro, chill. Like, chill. He's just a dickhead. Like, he just doesn't rate queer people. But like the part where they're like, I think they're in like the locker room, and then Dave kisses Kurt. Like, what? God, if that was me at school to some of the cuties that are mean to me, God, I'd be in heaven. Like a Bruno Mars song. We get those depictions which like are optimistic. And also like I think it can be misleading. It can be misleading, and it kind of communicates this idea that could be the end goal. You know, we need to be realistic. You know, I feel like I don't respect it, but like people that are like realistic with their intentions or even open with their intentions, I'm like, you know what, fair. You actually can't be disappointed because what did you expect? You were told something, so why did you expect something else? It doesn't make sense. And then obviously we have like the not so happy situations. We have, well, Pose. When I think of Angel and Stan, I thought, babe, my man literally bought you an apartment to keep you a secret. Same with Jules and her boyfriend. But I believe supposedly Jules' boyfriend's wife knows. Whether that's true or not, I don't actually know. Perks of being a wallflower. Oh, that was just awful. When you look at Patrick and Brad's relationship, it's absolutely screwed. It's just horrific, you know? And then this was quite early into like my exposure to queer representation. And I think when, you know, like the bit, you know, this scene where like Brad calls Patrick a F slur word, and then all of Brad's friends start beating him up and Brad just lets it happen. Like, I'm telling you, like, honestly, being with DL guys isn't safe. Like, it really isn't safe, because how can you switch up so quickly? How can you be lying next to someone you clearly care about, and then you literally watch their friends beat someone up who you supposedly love, you know? And it's the bit where, like, Brad says to Charlie, oh, thank you so much. Brad, I'm not being funny. If there's one time you need to break character, it needs to be then. But even, like, I just can't understand it. But surely, like, you wouldn't feel comfortable. Do you know what I mean? Even, like, homophobic bullies, most decent people wouldn't feel comfortable. A lot of it is, like, very verbal. But then saying that, you do get these cases where like these people genuinely will kill to protect themselves. I can't think of any examples, but like I've seen quite a lot of where like women will expose these DL men, and the men will then kill these women, their girlfriends, their wives, and then kill the people they've been sleeping with. You know, people will really do the most to preserve that identity, even when people know. Like I remember another DL man, funnily enough. I remember there's a really well DL guy in an area, right? And everyone knows. Everyone knows. Friends know. People know. Friend of a friend. And the friend started to get really strong feels for the guy and was like, I want you, I want to be with you. However, if you're like this, it can't work. And the guy literally said he couldn't. And I'm thinking, why? Like, why? Especially when everyone knows. I feel like if it's a bit of a shock factor, fair enough. Obviously, small town mentality. When you haven't been like covering your tracks as well as you thought you have, or as well as you thought you would, and every Tom, Dick and Harry knows, I'm like, baby boy, what have you got to lose? You know, being out will make your life so much happier, so much more fun, so much more colourful. Like, come on, what needs to be done? But I think, like, as people, we need to create a culture which makes it more accepting. As queer people, we need to give DL men less attention, realistically. As non-queer people, we need to not perceive gay or queerness as an insult. You know, if we embraced queerness from all across the board, like, it just works better for everyone, because being DL is rooted in insecurity. It's rooted in not being accepted, you know? And I can't imagine like the emotional and the social impact or decline that has on one's mental health, especially the time where you literally have no one, you know? I don't know, it's a difficult one, but I think the topic is really prominent, unfortunately. And I don't know, I just feel like we all need to do our bit to make it easier, you know? As a queer person, I needed to not give them as much attention as I did, you know? As non-queer people, we need to accept culture. Let's make it normal for someone to be gay. Why is it such a shock, you know? People don't come out because people make such a big deal out of it. If everyone was just like, okay, cool. Well, my friends have casually said to me, because I feel like as someone who's like quite open with their queerness, I feel like a lot of my friends feel more comfortable talking to me than they do other people, which I love. And when they tell me, I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, you know, it makes no difference to me and you. It makes no difference to our friendship. It's just nice to feel comfortable. Oh, nice that my friends feel comfortable. Nice that my friends feel comfortable enough to talk to me about it. But yeah, man. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Yeah. This was fun. I'm in my consistency era. My name is Jord Hellwood. This is the Winning Side Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I look forward to speaking to you soon. Okay, team, we're done.